I am Jill Zecknoff. I recognize some faces, but there are a few that I do not know. I am not a professional speaker, but here we go. I'm starting off with an image that will kind of summarize everything going on. Initially, when they asked me to give this presentation on this topic, I am an artist. And I decided not to do it about myself, but the philosophy. And I had some interesting discussions with actually my kids about art and garden and art and how it's infused in our lives. We started talking candles, scented candles, flowers, perfume, clothing, just how enmeshed as humans we are with a garden. And so that's what my whole train of thought. So here we go. As a famous ancient story goes, humans began in a pretty amazing garden, only to get themselves kicked out. And for punishment, we get to till and weed all by ourselves. The memory of that garden must run deep because we've been trying to recreate it ever since. Okay, and what have we learned? To get a good garden, one blends science and plants, but to get a really good garden, one adds art and beauty. Humans began to attempt to master their landscapes early on for food production and control, which is a very practical thing. Indications of this are the tiered slopes found throughout Europe, and I've seen these in person floating down the Danube River. And they find ancient idols and stuff in there, so they kind of can date some of them to early Roman period and before. Some of them are kind of like prehistory too, and they're spectacular to see, and they are still used. They're still visible today. And the next thing we did, we began to wall off gardens. And this is a monastery in Europe. And we wall things off to keep people out, to keep animals out, to protect from the weather. There's many reasons, but we did begin to wall. And Babylon. Babylon is an example. We only have the myth and the descriptions in there. And this is, of course, a stylized version. But the Persians really did do like blue tile. I've studied architecture. I'm an interior designer. And they did do the blue tile. And they do have, famous archaeological pieces that kind of do look like this. So I would say this would be probably close to the description. Just a little food for thought. And at some point, we began to realize that there was this beauty in the whole process of gardening. So we include the aroma of a rose, the tinkling of water running through a brook or a man-made fountain, the cooling effect of trimmed canopy trees, and the quest for unusual colors and plants. The more we put them, all begin to matter. Eventually, in the evolution of the civilized world, man began to garden to show power and mastery and wealth. And this is a Renaissance garden. Think of the grand estates in Europe. In the Renaissance, they spent fortunes moving the earth. They did not have the equipment that we do. They moved mountains. And these are like individual people who had so much wealth, they could hire vast array of gardeners, maintenance people, creatives to come up with a plan. And you get things like this, and they exist today. They still keep them how they can afford to is beyond me. And it's definitely meant to impress and to show off and to say, I'm kind of a king, basically. They also, in this time, began to want unique specimens. And so they sent people out into the world. And we get a good example of that is the tulip mania. And this is from The Guardian because people were fighting over this book not that long ago. But the tulip that sells, if you had an unusual tulip, it could be more valuable than your home. So it just shows kind of a little glimpse of what it meant. What's that?
Bitcoins.
Yeah. Okay. So here, hold on. Okay. So, well, at this point, you may think that I'm a landscape historian or a philosopher. I'm not. I'm a decorator by trade. I live in the world of art, hanging on walls, printed fabrics, decor, objects. And how on earth do I get to talk about art in a garden? And I'm not 100% sure, but I just know that it's true. I know that art for me seems to flow from the science of the garden, and then the garden seems to flow from the influence of art. And what do I mean? I'm going to give you several examples that I have been obsessed with over the years. The first are the gardens in Europe. I grew up on a reservation in southwest South Dakota. I used to gather, we had cactus in our yard. It was a struggle for my mom to get a decent flower to bloom. So she was so proud if she had a poppy or a tiger lily actually make it. It was a big deal. For holidays, I would go out into the pasture and I would gather up sage, prairie grasses, weeds, anything that looked like a plant. And I would actually make huge arrangements for the holidays for our table. And they were actually pretty good. Back was like such a humble thing that I did. I didn't know any better. I saw gardens on people's farms and ranches and in towns, and of course people rose. And I mean, I knew about that. But then I experienced this, and I was just kind of like blown away by it all. It's like, holy cow. I'm like, I can do some of those things. I am naturally attracted to design and form and repetition and texture and and no, I'm never going to be grand like that, but I decided I'm going to put some of those elements into my own garden. So I love this one. This one is, I can never say the name in French correctly, but here, this one really inspired me. They just use like old wood, which I have access to, and they use them for 3D structures. They put them in, they train plants up. They use ivy. If you see this in the winter, underneath it, they just have slats in the shape of a heart. And the ivy grows up, and when it's green, it covers it. They trim it and they maintain a heart. They do little whimsical things like that. And I'm like, I'm hooked. I love this kind of stuff. I experiment. I'm not a trained professional. I just love stuff like this. I love this. This is willow wattling. You can use sticks and branches and weave them in. I've done like the teepees, and any kind of structure. I've done that. I have a friend, Wayne, who's done that. I couldn't get your picture online, but he has built these in his yard. They're pretty impressive. Using native willow from the river. I love this. I've tried to trim my trees, my fruit trees. My husband's not really fond of me doing that because I'm not trying for production. I'm totally just doing it for the fun of the shape. But I love that. Wouldn't that be cool to sit under there? I showed my daughters like, I want to sit in there. And that's just, again, a form of willow wattling where they weave together. But they also have a living fence where they took the plants and they began to grow to create a natural fence. It's a little hard to tell there, but you can do that with willow that grows down at the river from here. In fact, Wade and I are both trying right now. We're playing around with it. And I learned that by mistake because I took willow that I had cut from my creek and I put it in my front flower box to create arches all the way across to support, and it started to grow. And I mean, it had sat out on my driveway for 2 weeks before I did that. I could not believe it was still alive. So that's kind of a good thing to start with. And now I get to this. The second part where I say humans are naturally due, they needed to get specimens and learn and have some kind of information system to be able to achieve the level that they did. And why I have this was, I went to a trade show and it has vendors, antique vendors from all over the world. It was out of state. And there was a Swedish supplier in this, and she had this set on the wall. So I saw this set in person and I found her. I went to see what it costs. I found her on the internet, so this is taken from her website. And they're very expensive. I could never afford them. But it probably was somebody's just little school project or science project or whatever, a learning experience. And they pressed the flowers and labeled them. And now it's art. And it's incredible art. So you can do things. And I'm trying this at home. I'm playing around, and Wayne will be talking about this a little bit further. We use like pressing the specimens as a way to gather information, but we also hired artists before the camera to create images. And I love this image. This is from the Met Cloisters, and it is north of the city. They have Renaissance or medieval art primarily in a particular building that shows it in natural light. And once a week, they turn the page of this manuscript and they feature one of the plants that's in the medieval gardens that are planted around in the facility. It's awesome to see. They considered it the dandelion a flower. And they thought it was very beautiful and it was edible. So this was like a big deal. I love it because my husband hates it when I point this out every now and then. I drug him to see it. It's pretty cool. Another person, this is in the I think he was 1600s, and this is this guy. This is this huge book that I own now. This artist was hired by a very wealthy man to record every plant in his garden all 4 seasons. And so this is just a strawberry. And he obviously was a wonderful calligrapher too, because there were some art. I bought it solely to look at the art of it, but I love it. So it was Vessler who did that. And this is a form of record keeping and learning. The next one I love, this is this lady. And she's from the 1700s, I believe. And she was in her 70s. And she was isolated out in the country in Europe, and her friends would bring her flowers from all over, and she would recreate. This is a paper collage. So she's in her 70s, and she's cutting this out with scissors. She's hand painting it, and she's gluing the pieces on. But they're very accurate. And she would put them on black paper so they really stood out, and they are stunning to look at. She's a very interesting lady to read about. Probably still on to it. This I have not seen, but this is on my bucket list. So at Harvard, they have a huge museum of glass flowers. I'm assuming this is some kind of aster. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's glass. And they used to make specimens out of glass, and they have a huge display. I like this one. This lady is currently obviously living, and she is from Minneapolis, and she creates in paper things from her garden. So she's fun one to follow on Instagram, and she has works all over the world. It's really, she's great inspiration. She kind of shows you how she does it too. She doesn't hide it. She's just really good. She and her husband are both artists. So that's just paper and glue. This one blows me away every time. I love looking at her stuff. This is on metal. She recreates plants, and this is just a melon, but she does grasses, she does flowers and plants. Her website is stunning. Again, I could never afford it, but it's fun to look at. And, but she'll even do plants down to the root if it's pulled out of the ground. They're spectacular. They look so real. There's so much to look at and to learn from online, and it's Carmen Elmon. Obviously, we have a price range, but I dream. And I guess I should I can show some of the stuff. I love hand bars. And these are just like plates of, this too was a science. It has the science stuff behind it. This is an older one. The different plates, this is just marigold, which I love marigolds. The simple things, put in a frame so it elevates it. It's literally a page from a book. But it's a particular book that does have the science with it, so it has some value to it. I enjoy doing paper flowers. Like, I spent hours. I saw this. There's an artist in New York who does these, and she sells them online, and they're in like all the socialite houses. So I came across them doing interiors. Like, I love those. And I looked at them. I even went to the shop. I was in New York, and I'm like, I'm gonna go look. So I went home and I recreated it, and then I found out when I got done, and I was so proud of it. My kids were looking, and she sells a book that gives you the pattern, walks you through step by step. Every piece. I spent hours. But anyway, there's just so much fun stuff. It's from I love geraniums. I have a number of varieties. So this is me, and during the winter, I'm like, I put this out on my shelf, and it's kind of kid-proof, and I just have fun with it. So I do a lot of paper flowers. I love to draw. I love photography, and it's my record keeping. I love to do arrangements. This is from my garden. I love secondhand, and I love little vases. This is from Goodwill. I'm so proud of this vase. I was so excited when I saw it. I love this. It's pottery. It's wonderful. And these are just end of the spring season. I just went out and grabbed. This is one of my favorite pictures. I love to photograph. I live in my house and I take pictures, and my kids are used to it because they get them all the time. Hey, look, I have this. This is an area in my yard, which right now is horrible. been gone. I love to incorporate in the things that I saw in Europe. So I have my old material. I have raised beds like in the monastery, but they're made out of steel. I had the people out that do by the tower. Is it Hirschman? What's the tower place out? Yeah, they made metal boxes for me years ago, and I loved them and held up great. I love urns. Looking at mine aren't valuable, but I love the look. I painted them to elevate them, and I just have fun. I do clipped hedges to delineate spaces, which I learned in Europe. So I use yew instead of boxwood because I cannot keep boxwood alive here over the winter. So I try to elevate my vegetables, but this is a couple years back. I just have fun. My husband actually has been getting into it too, so I had to give him that and walk away. I love arranging flowers. I love peonies. I love all the classics. And again, photography on my kitchen table and have fun doing it. So the point from mine is you can't separate out the art from the garden. It's kind of always been there. And it's instinctual. It's part of us. It's like I try to think about why I do what I do. And everybody does it. Even the little ranch mother that I got in her garden, the way she did her rows, and she made these little labels. You know, she elevated it. We just kind of naturally do. Sometimes we don't because we really have to survive and produce food and we're tired and stuff. But it seems to me humans always want to do it. It's like in our DNA and essence. I'm not sure, part of who we are. So, and my last picture is I'm always hunting for fun stuff. They never make it more than 1 or 2 years, but I always try weird and fun things. And this is foxglove, which is easy to grow, but when I get it going, I have like 1,000 photographs of that one plant. I did delphiniums one year and they were literally this tall. I mean, I tried to find a weird thing and I put it on the side of the house just for me to walk by. I don't care, my kids, pray my grandkids don't kill it or get poisoned, but anyway, I encourage you to do the same and hopefully you'll have some fun ideas from today's presentation. I'm just as excited as you to see what they're going to do. So that was my presentation.
Oh, Karen's up.
Yeah.
Computer,
because I'll probably need to leave.
Here, I can use some of this stuff.
I'm just gonna leave this up, because once you close it, yours will be out. Yeah, you put it over there. Room to put my. I
don't know if I'm gonna get, I'm Karen Weisler, I am a master gardener. And I am going to show you, and again, I am not a professional. I have a huge garden, huge flower beds, and I'm always bringing stuff in the house. So I love to do centerpieces, and I just kind of put stuff together, and so we'll start with one of these. And first of all, what I do is get a pot, and I get the oasis. This one here is the wet oasis, and you have to soak this in water. It takes a little bit for it to absorb all the water, and then you can cut it to your desire, to fit your pot. And again, like Josette, I get a lot of my pots from Goodwill and etc. because boy, you can get some good buys for $1. So, and I have a whole basement wall full of vases and flowers, etc. So the first one I'm going to do is going to use a lot of common stuff. This one here is boxwood. It is one of my absolute favorites, and I use boxwood year-round. Even in the wintertime, you can take boxwood and put it in the house for a while because it turns brown, but boxwood keeps its leaves. But all you have to do is bring it in and put it in water for a couple days. It reminds me of a cedar tree, how they turn kind of brown, etc. And when you bring a cedar tree in, which I grew up on a farm out in the country, and we used to go out and get cedar trees for our Christmas tree. You bring it in, put it in water, it turns nice and green. So does this. So first of all, I usually do my base, and again, I am not a professional. So I get a nice little clip here, and I usually do the, and then again, when you do these, make sure to pull the lower stuff. And so I usually start with, I kind of start with the corners. Kind of give me an idea of the depth that I'm gonna go with. These I'm gonna use later, so. Cut this one out. And usually when you do bases, the rule is not to do any higher than 1.5 times your, and not always, but in general. Oops, down, upside down. That's what we get done, but. Sure, I think. And again, this one here, I clipped the top off, but I'm gonna be using this as some of the fill throughout. I usually do my base, the base part first. I know different people in their classes tell you to put your flowers in first. Everybody's got their own ideas, I guess, but this is what's always worked for me. And then I can start filling in. We're gonna actually save for up above. Too big. And boxwood is something that you're cutting all the time anyhow. Some people, you gotta trim it up every year, so. See that one also. So it works out really well to, when you're trimming, to save it and throw it together a little centerpiece. This is one of my Sunday morning projects. I do a lot. Sunday mornings, I go out in the garden and grab some flowers and some boxwood, or in the wintertime, I like to use cedar or pine, or, your trees can always be trimmed up a little bit. So then I make a little more of a Christmas one. This one here, we're gonna stick it in.
Since you have this fresh thing you're making and you know all about it, how long does that stay in your house then? Is it?
The boxwood will literally last a month.
Yeah, but your whole.
With the flowers, depending on the flowers. If you really want to keep them, for periods of time, you can put them in a cool place. Some people actually put them in the refrigerator at night, and change the water. Always changing your water helps a lot also. Getting fresh water.
Does it go 2 weeks for you? Would you keep?
At least a full week, not necessarily 2 weeks, depending on the flower. Zinnias last a long time. Daisies don't last real long, but they're pretty. Certain flowers last a little longer than others. Okay, so I have my base done. So now I'm going to kind of just fill in. You always want one that's a little taller in the top. And then you can, again, just use all of the. I don't usually do this fast, so I have to just accelerate.
So Karen, is there rules like, when you're doing a pot, you want a thriller, a filler, and a spiller? So when you're putting
I
a
do
flower
kind of follow
arrangement
that
together,
rule.
do you have
Yeah,
kind of that?
yeah, what you do when you do your outside pots, the spill, the frill, spill, and fill.
Yeah.
That's 3 R. More in here. A bit smaller. So like I said, you can use a lot of this stuff. So, and then I usually start putting my flowers in. And a lot of times I'll do something a little striking. Sometimes when I'm doing something, like if I'm doing something in red, sometimes I'll even use oh, I'm trying to think of something really, really tall. Like cannas even, when they bloom, sometimes I'll use that as my center. Or if I'm not real big on growing gladiolas, gladiolas always look good filled into. Always when you do those in your flowers, get rid of the leaves, and then you can just start filling it in. We might add a little more fill to this too. This is a weed, and we call this, I looked this up, snake root. It's a weed, but I love it when I'm doing, not necessarily in this one, but I love the, kind of like your baby's breath, it's a little bit of a fill. So I'm always looking for, as I'm walking through, in the fall time, I love, like even different grasses and stuff, look good for just adding a little bit of the spikes in there. This one here, I am going to have to give a little more fill in this one. Sometimes it's oasis when you get all these in there, they're kind of hard to get in there because you got so much stuff in there. There. I was going to do one with just coneflowers and this. I use a lot of this. And this, we found out was a form of Veronica. The bees and butterflies absolutely love this stuff. I mean, I'll have thousands. I've got a whole roll of that stuff. I'll have thousands of them landing on there. But literally, it's about getting something to fill with. The other thing I use a lot of is peony leaves. And I use that when I do my peonies also. That really, really holds up really, really well.
Is your,
Big zinnias, they're kind of slow getting it going.
is your flower garden native or hybrid? Or both?
Is it what?
Hybrid or native,
I do both.
do you?
Yeah. I've got, well, we have 15 acres,
Oh,
so
my.
there's, yeah, a lot of weeds, a lot of flowers, a lot of, I mean, certain stuff, I save my husband first. That, it's like, oh my gosh. What is it? So.
It's
Pretty,
all
right?
right.
So Karen, I have a question. As you're working on those zinnias, what's the cure to getting those stems that getting stiff? Because I know you're not supposed to pick them when they're soft. Is that correct?
Oh,
Because-
another thing, when you do your flowers, always early morning. And another thing, especially when you get into any type of a sunflower, Sunflowers are tough to get because they always want to follow the sun, they always want to tip. And one of the rules to that is to take a straw.
Yeah.
And then it won't tip. And you can get also bigger ones. I did have some here. Some of the fatter ones, but just doing a straw holds them up so they won't tip. I should have used that in there. You can even get those that bend a little bit. That way you can give it a little bit of bend if you want it to face out a little bit. Get that one back in there. These straws, I thought I had some just regular standard size straws, but I couldn't find them. But again, so this one's got a little bit of bend with it, so you could put that in there. We'll take, whoops, pull it all the way down. Take the end off there, just to add a little more variety in there. Stick that all the way in there.
Have you ever used dill as a fill?
Dill's another really big one. One that I really, really like, and it wasn't ready yet, I couldn't believe it, is my Queen Anne's lace. I use that a lot. And it wasn't ready yet. I mean, they were just forming heads, but it wasn't ready enough to do that. So, just. And then you're going to always be looking for something to kind of fill in those empty spaces. And I'm not just looking at this. But anyhow, you get the idea. And then I take this stuff I love. This is called snake root. Nope, this one is called soap root. I'm sorry, it's soap root. And I use that a lot. This one I like a lot with hydrangeas even or something. But again, you can use it for fill. Just to kind of fill in some of those spots that need a little bit of something in it.
Can you say the name again for that flower?
Was
The
that,
one that you're adding right now, the name of it?
The name.
The name of that white flower.
oh, that is, and this is very, very invasive. I like it, I've got it down in the corner, but it comes in pink and white, and it grows everywhere. And it gets a pretty big root on it, so it's tough if it gets really established. So you don't want to plant it, or else keep it in control. It's called soap root.
So,
Yep. And
Is that a natural one, or is that
Get
something
seed
you
heads
have?
on it too, so if you want seed heads in, you can just do that. It's a little bit dainty and they last a long time. But like I said, they just add a little bit of airiness to it. Like I said, and you can, put this in there, but it's gonna get a little too heavy in there. But the other one I'll do, and I'll probably do that tonight. I'll use that tonight. We do some. This one I got a little bigger than I like to. I should have took it in a little bit more, not left the greenery out quite so far.
Karen, is that sulfurate or weeder? I mean, is that a natural?
Native?
Native or?
Native
or-
it's I don't know where you get it from. I got it from, I think, or one of our plant sales. Might have been from Mary Clemens.
Oh, fun check.
When I very first got it, yeah, and not realizing it was so invasive. I mean, I shouldn't say invasive, but you just gotta kind of watch it, because it really likes to take control. But if you got an area that you want filled in, it works out great for that.
My neighbors.
So does it seed itself or does it come back?
No, I wish I did. Is it wet?
Does it come back from the seed or does it spread by the root?
Both.
Oh.
It does come back from the root, but like I said, well, some of these have a little bit of seed heads on them. It'll also spread that way. So you do have to kind of watch it. And like I said, you just kind of look at it, if you got a kind of a bare spot, just either throw, tonight I'll use this, with probably coneflowers. This one here I don't want to use because he's bent too much. Sometimes you don't mind it when they're facing out. Should go with a little bit right there. I can get them in there. And then usually, if you have the oasis, and again, you want the water really cold when you put that in there. It'll last for quite some time. Like I said, I don't usually do this quite this fast, so. But you get the general idea, but I am probably never without, and the other thing is too, when I start that oasis in the water, I usually put a active preservative in it too. You can get those at the florist shop, or anywhere, but like I said, you can, but like I said, make sure to pull the leaves off because they like to, make the flowers will not last as long. So that's kind of one of them. Like I said, boxwood is
Beautiful.
is great.
Google is not my friend. Remember?
So are you confused?
All right, I'm in for us.
Okay, can you all see this pretty good? Okay, so I realize the first two presentations were great because I'm gonna talk about taking the garden into art a little bit, and really appreciated Josette's comments about, I grew up on a farm by Ravinia, South Dakota, northwest of Wagner, but everything was always in rows, and as you'll see here shortly, rows have a purpose, but they aren't always as artful. If you're doing something very formal there, but I like the shifting shapes. And I've made progression from the 1-cent seed gurneys packets to heirloom tomatoes to all kinds of varieties of beans. There's a bean talk from several years ago out there you can learn about, but now I'm getting into poppies and starting to see after 3 or 4 years of working with poppies, getting whole beds of poppies that are coming up, and want to transform my garden more into flowers, even including beds of straw flowers for what you're going to see over here in a little bit. So I always look at springtime as canvas. This, I forget what year this was, but it wasn't this clean this spring. This was a couple years ago, but you can see the different raised beds. Here you see some of the willow wattling. I'm wanted to progress towards that. We'll see what I do long-term permanency. A lot of it's shingles, but utilizing cattle trellises. And Josette mentioned the wood structures before I had cattle trellises, just simple trimmings off some of the trees in the yard. And that was one of the first little bits. I think I did that in, well, obviously 21 or 22. It's still quasi-functional, but they last about 3-4 years with that soil and with the moisture we get. But one of the things I wanted to show you was the progression of that canvas just over time. These are about a month apart. The next series of photos. This is 3 weeks later, and you'll see lots of there's a lot going on in these gardens, anywhere from 100 to 150 varieties of seeds, plants that grow, flowers, et cetera, in a given year. And then by late July, it's kind of a jungle in there, but it is also very functional. Lots of good stuff in there. So to me, I mean, that's part of the art along the way here. But we get to this, and I like this quote, but I know Josette didn't mention Bunny Mellon, but she introduced me to her. But a garden, I always think about this. This has helped me deal with weeds and deal with progressions in my garden. Hovering always in the state of becoming sums its own past and its future. Meaning, all gardens, and I think all of our journeys as gardeners and how we incorporate it, it changes over time. Mine certainly has. But one of the things I like about this picture, you juxtaposition, let's see if I can go back now. Compared to that, lots of green, lots of beauty. I mean, there's still some structures out there. I didn't do a lot of cleanup. The broom corn is still standing. Some of the structures I use to trellis, lots of different things through there. But what isn't there is a lot of that greenery, a lot of the colors. And, the food part of it. There is the harvest part of it. That is a big part for me. The salsas, all the different tomato products, the onions, and I even, hanging onions like that. They hang in our porch because I think they start becoming art. But to me, really, where the art starts coming in, and then how do you take that harvest into things like the quino peppers pickled in lots of different spices and cachaca, or a lot of the soft necks are better for braiding, but braiding the garlic and even incorporating little pieces of lavender into the braids. So making that, transforming that harvest into art as well. Then even from harvest, the plating to the art. I still love the caprese salad picture. I mean, to me, that could have almost been cast on as an artwork. Or this dish of Jacques Pepin's peas and basically a cream yolk. My daughter said, "Clay, you got to try this. It's like candy." But the image of that, transforming it from harvest to the plate, and where it becomes not only pleasing to the palate but to the eye as well. So, but what we're here to talk about today is really preserving that art. So, my phone is full of flowers and plants and insects from the garden. This is, I just took a screenshot of, this is what some of the areas look like. That's obviously during the heavy zinnia times. But I do want to talk about, I'm going to do a progression from just a couple things, preserving the art of the garden, from Job's tears to hard shell gourds to flowers. And hard shell gourds, many of you heard birdhouse gourds, but there's lots of different hard shell gourds out there. So I'll touch on all of that. And how do you keep this, from that winter scene going into, so you see that in the winter progression. So Job's tears is an ancient grain, grows about 3-4 feet tall. I shared some seeds here recently, and they're coming up. They do like warmer weather. They look a lot like corn, a little bit like corn, a little bit like crabgrass, somewhere in between. But here you see the seed, the beads or seeds starting to develop, almost like on a tassel. And that is the product there. I won't spend a lot of time on here, but just to give you an example of some of the transforming that into art. Sometimes if I'm on the road with work, I take this box with me with all the beading supplies. You can pierce them with a needle, but I do use a real small drill bit too. These have all been drilled already, so they're ready. Different sizes here, a couple different beading pieces here. Obviously the bracelet on here, and then what you see in that photo. I like the 7-strand necklaces, how they turn out. I have made a few rosaries for family members, but just a real brilliant bead taken from the garden. Easy to grow. I planted those maybe once or twice, and now because I don't till, I know where they're going to come up, and I just start watching for them in the springtime. And some places I weed them, some places I encourage their growth in different patches of the garden. So then the hard shell gourds. Here you see a snake gourd. You can see one laying over there on the table there, 3-4 feet long. Also, so not the traditional birdhouse gourds, but then also the banana gourds. And one of the things with gourds, you do want to get these in the ground early. I don't, a lot of the squashes, I don't like trying to start those early in the season, but do start those as early as I can. They do like warmer weather, but let those mature out in the garden to get to that dried state. There's a little bit of work involved because they do have a cuticle. If you leave them out there, it's easy to scrape them off after a couple thaws, backside of a butter knife to help clean those off. Those are clean there ready. And just to show you some of the work I've done with those, a lot of it starts with drawing an image on them and then wood burning. This is, this whiles away the winter hours, but along with all the other stuff. But to this point where, I'm getting some of these images here. There are a couple examples over there of these. These are little ornaments I've made for our Christmas tree. And then some of the bigger examples, some in progress, some pretty close to being done. And Bronca gourds, another hard shell variety, make a great Grinch. Caveman's Club. So one of my favorite things of recent, and I really got into this last summer almost to excess, my family would say, but taking a lot of zinnias, and I have started working more with poppies because I'm getting the poppy beds going now. How do you preserve flowers for artwork down the road? So these are zinnias that have just been harvested from the garden. These were poppies that I harvested probably 3 weeks ago. I'll show you some successes and failures with those along the way as we're getting there. But one of my most effective ways for preserving flowers is using silica sand. So basically, popping those in, it's good to have those facing up so you can pour the sand on them. What I'm doing here, these are actually carrot flowers. Again, no till, carrots are coming up, volunteer. These are from the spring already. They should be dried. And yeah, that's the batch. Again, as Karen said, pick these in the morning. I go out in the mornings, pick them. The poppies are going in the press first, and then these are going into silica sand. One thing nice about the silica sand too, it does have a color coating to it. You'll see a few green flecks in there, but it should be, this variety at least should be orange, or orange to white. And all you have to do is pop it in the oven in the baking tray for at 250, 300 degrees for an hour or two, stir it up, and it'll basically pull the moisture back out of it, and it's ready to use again. So yeah, that's one of the varieties of silica sand. Me pouring just a week or so ago, we'll pop open that tray because I think they've been in there almost long enough. And so yes or not, they hold color, especially, one of the things that poppies I don't think would work well, even the Gerber daisies, they're a little flimsy, but I've been able to utilize them. But they do hold structure, hold color very well in the silica sand process. So the other piece is hanging flowers, or drying them in a fairly dry environment. Gomphrena does work well for that. I do have a bed of about 90 straw flowers. I started indoors this year, waiting for them to pop open because some of those flowers are obviously a little more conducive to simply hanging and air drying. They do not, one of the things, these have good structures, so they do dry well. They hold their color pretty well. A little bit of loss there, but this is right after I tied these up, so they're still fairly brilliant. But I think that these two bouquets are on the table over there. I'll walk over there and go through all of that in the interest of time. And then finally, pressing flowers. I started working with that last year, more so this year. And I will show you some of the, because this is, again, learning, experimenting, checking things out online about how to work with that. Working with Cosmos, that is that bouquet dried, and I think I have the plate in resin art over there of these cosmos. Again, the color, it held well, but one of my first experiences, I was pressing way too tight. They do need airflow, so you keep them from molding, keep air moving, even though they're in a press, so that the moisture can escape from them. So another plate, 2 plates of Cosmos. I have a couple of those plates over there. And then finally, working with the resin art, working with the spheres. I have quite a few of those over there. I needed to work with cattle in the springtime or sheep. I might know what that tool is over there. But how do you get dried flowers into silicone spheres like that? And so that spreading tool for rubber bands for another purpose worked great for this, even little tiny spheres like this, because I grow things like Persian carpet zinnias, which are just, to me, I love the little diminutive flowers that I get in there. And you'll see some of the spheres I'm putting 7 or 8 zinnias in there. One of the things with the resin work, you do have to layer. So here you see, these have all got a first layer in it, probably ½ inch deep. So a bigger sphere like this will take 4 to 5 pours of that. You see a little bit of line, but help here. The other piece that helps with resin art is we're working with resin, make sure it's stirred up good, but then have a heat gun handy to basically warm it up. It helps with the little tiny air bubbles you often see in the resin work. Coasters, again, the carrot flowers here. These are halfway, usually 2 or 3 pours for something about a ½ inch thick there. One of the things that, we'll work on more this next year is doing these upside down, but then you're gonna have to work with air bubbles because I want that flat, smooth surface on the top. I wanted to see what I was working with last year. So, but here you see the spheres and some of those examples over there. Here you see there we go, it's going fast now. Yeah, so where I'm putting in multiple flowers into a sphere, and then, yeah, I did go a little bit overboard. It's gonna be worse this year because I've got more stars. And one of the nice things, once I've got these flowers dried, just a small layer of silica sand in the bottom, pop the dried flowers on top of that. And so I'll put together a big supply for this winter and then do a lot of barn. So that's the presentation side of it. I'll just show you a couple things over here. So one of the things, the spreader tool. So, the bigger spheres where I'm putting multiple flowers in, it does work great for opening, and you don't get a lot of opening, but especially when you start getting into the much smaller ones where that hole there, it'd be hard to get a flower in there. And so, you have to be careful so you don't tear the silicone, but you can pop that in there and get it, work with tweezers. Basically, you're doing a little bit of surgery, get it in place, and then start pouring the resin. One of the other things too is sometimes to pour a small layer of resin in there just to give it that initial surface area. What else we got here?
Question on your, when you do your resin, do you get a line? You said it takes a couple of pours. Do you get a line?
So you can look at these. This one's like 5 or 6 pours, and I see one line. You don't see. I don't.
You don't really see them. In other words, not a distinct.
No, and I was looking. Yeah, you can take a look later. So the other thing, so this is kind of the reveal part of it because I did have a few flowers. So one of the things, not everything succeeds. I noticed I was kind of excited because I haven't done a lot of sunflowers. So the first sunflower went in, but I didn't watch the shifting sand, and this part came out of the sand. So these petals are fairly nice here. The other thing too is to capture leaves, like with those, actually I used carrot leaves on this one, but some of the Gerber daisies. But here's a dahlia from a few days ago. Dahlias are a little bit touchy, but you can see it holds up pretty firm. And the nice thing is then it's kind of like being a little bit of a paleontologist because you can simply, so here's a carrot coming out. I just love the lace work. It's really, really nice. And they really work good in these, you'll see some coasters over here. And so, the zinnias are just, see, like, I probably will not use that one. You can see how it comes off shape. I mean, anything with dried flowers, yeah. One of the things with dried flowers you often read about is, oops, I must have petal, but that's okay, there's more of these, is how do you hold the, whoops. So, but hold the whites. The whites can be hard, but, you know, there's some more dahlias coming, another carrot flower. Especially when you get the leaves that are poking out like that. The zinnias aren't great, I'll have a lot more to choose from. That one's good. So, yeah, just to get a picture, there's a nice dahlia. Here's one to show you how it holds the color. I mean, you can see that's completely dry. So those have been in there for once they're in about a week. I did find a rose I had in since last fall, and its color was still brilliant. So that's that piece of it. And obviously the resin art when it's done. These were pressed Persian carbazinias. Again, first work on that. Here you see that Cosmos setup. Held the color pretty nice. So what I'm really looking forward to doing is, so I mentioned the poppy work. So I didn't get I had this press up, but I kind of had to empty and clean out. So I'm going to go the easy route. I haven't used calculus since the 80s. 3 semesters. So I'm like, I'm going to put the calculus book to work. But this is where it's important to show failures too. So I have lots of really cool poppies. I mean, some of these I might be able to pull the petals, but notice how the mold is coming in the center of those. The colors aren't great. There's a good, bad example here. I mean, those are basically, they're not usable because again, airflow and the thing with books, things are sticking to them. But, I won't have to do these triple integrals anymore. So anyway, so this book's full of, it'll be fun to look through there, see if I find anything good. So I did do a little reading, and then based on what I learned last year, I had these great carriage bolts, could really clamp this down. No, that's not what you want to do. And so stickiness, airflow, working on that. So what I did this spring to work on these I just literally opened up today for the first time. So I'm working with a paper towel, then a piece of regular paper, but then also it was a parchment paper to help with the sticking. I was worried about the moisture. The other thing I didn't press this super tight, and I also kept a fan blowing on the side of this, spun it once a week or so. And one of the things you're gonna see here, some of these are upside down, but super fragile. So I'll work with tweezers with these, and these will be fun to put in plates. I'm actually thinking of a window pane, pop these in, and then resin art, old window end. But you can see they're holding colors, the anthers are looking great. I'll leave this open so you can look at it, but yeah, it's super, super fragile to even touch. So yeah, and then the carrots, obviously you can see that, combinations of zinnias. Here's the Gomfrey. I mean, it holds its color fairly well, and it's fairly sturdy too, so I'm able to use that. And then you can see the different banana gourds. This one here I haven't cleaned off yet. So you can see a simple soak with a wet paper towel for an hour or two, and then scrape. This was a long-handled dipper gourd. I do have one that's like 5 feet long and really neat, but this one I put a lot of work into. It actually has lights up around the different reindeer and stars. And, yeah. And one of my favorite Santas.
Nice.
And then obviously the rock. So that's what I've got. I hope, again, look for, this has been a progression. It fills the winter nights, but it does, working with these flowers, keeping that harvest and, bringing the yard home. Look forward to more.
What is your job?
What is my job?
Yeah.
This.
Okay.
No, I work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I work on Missouri River policy. So, yeah, that's what I do outside of this. But I'm taking the day off and maybe to enjoy this. So, yeah. But yeah, so.
Well, in between your resin pours, you said like there's 5 pours and some of those bigger ones. How long is it in between the pours?
You can usually, it's about a day or so. It isn't super long. Like some of these little tiny, here's a Persian carpet. I mean, and think about popping that in there, but they really are, they're like a little, they have a little flat edge on that. I'll pour in one pour. But yeah, it's about a day. So yeah, take a look at these. Just, they're pretty sturdy. I'm looking for lines. I mean, like here, there's some good bubbles on this side, but the other side's really nice. So, yeah, so that's what I've got today. and
Wow.
Appreciate it.
You go to art shows and sell your work then?
No.
No.
It's a great photo, I got a job and it takes a lot of time. Someday maybe, it's like, I told my daughter, I said, you know what, coasters at your wedding someday. And I have heard from a good friend who's an attorney that, they don't really appreciate the gorgeous stuff, but trust, they have to display it.
What size is the easiest to work with?
Size of gourd or flower or resin?
The orbs.
Say again.
What size in the orbs are the easiest to work?
Oh, these, the easiest is probably something about, well, I mean, in reality, popping some stuff into this size because you can get a big opening. But then too, as you're pouring, you really have to watch. Once a flower starts touching the resin, you want to make sure it's situated right. If you're doing multiples in there, but yeah, medium size is the easiest. But I've gotten, 3 zinnias into something this size, so yeah.
In the coasters, are those more than one pour too?
Yeah, usually these are 2 or 3 pours.
So you do the base layer and then you do the,
I actually I'll put the flour down and then start pouring right away. Because one of the issues I have, especially with zinnias, is they're a bit thick. And I've looked for deeper zinnias, deeper coaster silicone molds. So that's where I'm going to go upside down. But then what you'll have to watch for is, generally if it's warm, the resin actually heats up when you're stirring. And you should be in well ventilated gloves, et cetera, that can be messy. But, so then I won't get, you'll see bumps on some of these bigger zinnias where I couldn't.
so it won't be as clear or as flat.
Well, it will be flat if I start with an upside,
Start upside down, that's why you want to do it upside down.
Yeah, that's one of those. And I will say, not promoting something, but I've, tried lots of different resins. This one's worked really well for me.
Where do you get that resin?
Online. Yeah.
Online.
I don't know if I've seen it. Hobby Lobby might have had that variety, but. Yeah. But I buy the gallons. Exactly. Yeah, but I am excited. I'm jazzed about these poppies.
I have to see him live.
Looks like you.